Hey, thanks for watching today. This video is going to cover the Indiana 2023 fall auctions. These are tax liens, and the season is already in flight, so we're going to consider this kind of an auction update on where things stand. And if you want to skip past some of the beginning, some of the background information about how the fall auctions work, how they compare to the spring auctions, you can use the chapters to jump straight ahead if you want to just go straight to the map and the aerial tour of the auction. So on that note, let's get going. So let's talk about how the fall tax auctions work. And there's a lot to this part, so bear with me here. So first off, the fall tax auction season in Indiana is also called treasurer sales or sometimes a standard tax sale. And the reason is this is to distinguish the fall season from the spring season. And you might hear the spring season called the commissioner sales. Indiana, just to make it even more confusing, has occasional tax deed sales in just a very few select counties, and they have year-round foreclosure auctions online. So you're potentially looking at maybe 4 types of auctions if you just go and start looking for auctions without knowing what you're really looking at yet. So let's talk about specifically these fall tax sales. They're the biggest ones because these are the first chance to purchase liens on a newly delinquent property. So that just means when the properties become delinquent on their taxes, this is the first time investors have a chance to buy a lien on them. And it's worth noting that the leftovers from the fall auctions, which are again the largest auctions, those leftovers are kept and held over for spring sales and commissioner sales, but there are no over-the-counter liens in Indiana. Again, they keep the leftovers and then go to later auctions, and now they can even go to tax deed auctions in a few counties. But no over-the-counter. So what you're buying is a tax lien, and it's got an overbid format of the auction and a 1-year redemption. What that means is the starting bid would be roughly the taxes owed plus maybe some fees or penalties, and then you would actually bid above that amount with overbid in order to win the property. And the 1-year redemption just means the owner could redeem within a year of your purchase if you're buying at the fall auctions. So after you've bought one, there is a tax deed. You can have it issued as early as 1 year from the purchase of the tax lien if you bought from the fall auction. That's because that 1-year redemption has to burn off before they will issue you a tax deed. And after that, you would proceed with foreclosure steps and complete the process after you have the deed. So in contrast, like I said, the fall tax sales have a 1-year redemption period, but the spring commissioner sales have a 120-day redemption. So much shorter redemption, but that's because the spring commissioner sales are the leftovers from the fall auctions where there were many more properties. So think of spring commissioner sales kind of like second chance on these properties. That's why the redemption will be shorter. So the interest rate is not fully straightforward. We'll talk through it. First of all, it's penalty-based instead of prorated, which means regardless of when the owner redeems, you get a flat interest rate amount based on a few other rules. So a lot of states you'll see, for instance, if it's 12% interest prorated, if the owner waits 6 months to redeem, then you would get that 12% prorated, and it would be 6% because of 6 months. And in Indiana, that's just not the case. You're going to start off with 10% for liens that redeem within 6 months of the fall sale. Okay, so you have a base 10% penalty if it redeems in the first 6 months. This 10% is also applied to the overbid, which is not common in a lot of states. A lot of states do not give you interest for overbid. Beyond that, you get 15% for liens that redeem after that 6 months. So you think of it as kind of like you get your 10% base with that overbid, and then an extra 5% if it goes past 6 months for redemption. Back to the auctions, you're going to see a mixture. They are both in person and online. We're going to take a tour of SRI services in a minute that will help you sort through that. And let's move on to, let's just kind of visualize what I just talked through. You have a tax delinquent property that after it's delinquent, the counties publish their list on July 1st. And then those properties go through the fall tax auctions, which are the treasurer sales. And those sales take place late August through end of October. And then anything unsold from the fall auctions, and from even previous auctions maybe, are going to show up in the spring tax auctions, which are the commissioner sales. And it's worth noting, it looks like, I think we saw last year, some of them as early as February, and I think Lake County was the last one in May. So it's kind of a wider range if you're looking at the spring auctions. If you look at that, though, and put the whole year together, you have tax auctions on quite a few months of the year. It feels like one season ends and you're already preparing for the next one, for the most part, except maybe the middle of winter. But other than that, there's almost always some type of tax auction season going on. And lastly, as I mentioned, the leftovers are going to keep rolling over to next auctions, and a few of those are now deed auctions. I don't think that has a ton of traction in the state yet, but there are a few examples of where there have been deed auctions. So now let's take a look at these auctions at a glance. And we're talking about 88 auctions that we're looking at this fall that we've tracked. And in general, we have 29,700 roughly tax lien properties were advertised for auction. 45% of those properties have a structure. The total value of all the auction properties is actually over $1 billion. And the delinquent taxes, or the revenue that the counties are trying to recover, is over $213 million. And I did want to compare those to last year's numbers. We did have to fill in a few gaps and do some estimations, but here's, from the best I can tell, the total number of properties looks like it's up about 9-10% roughly year over year. The properties that have a structure, it was more like 41% previously. Now we're at 4%. Last year's, it was still over $1 billion, but not by much. So we're just a little bit higher, maybe 9% higher this time. And lastly, the delinquent taxes was actually down 5% year over year. I guess that means the valuations of the properties are increasing faster than the assessments. That's my best guess. It didn't make much sense since there were more properties though. So that was kind of an anomaly. And lastly, let's just, before we do the demo, let's go over the number of auctions by county, just so you can get a scale of magnitude for which counties have a lot of property. And if you've done anything in Indiana, it's probably no surprise that Lake County has almost over a third of the auction properties are just in Lake County. And if you look at the next few counties, it really drops quite a few. Marion County has roughly 20% of what Lake County has, and then so forth. St. Joseph, Madison are also very large auctions. And kind of the long tail keeps going into some of these counties have very small auctions, but these are the top 10. And I do want to point out in the right-hand column, the auction date. A few of these are in the past, and so you may be wondering why we're still talking about it. Again, this is an auction season update, so we're maybe 1/3 or less into the season, maybe a quarter into the season. So there's still a lot of counties to shop from. And frankly, Lake is one of the more competitive ones. So just because Lake County is finished doesn't mean you should give up on the rest of the season. So on that note, let's switch over and take a live demo of these auctions and how to find them. So let's start off with SRI services. This is the SRI website. It's a great place to reference for where the tax sales are. You will notice in this list I have selected Indiana tax sales and basically everything in the future. You want to do tax sale because if you do foreclosure sales, you'll get a whole other list of sales that are not by the same rules that we're talking about at all. So let's look at these counties, and you'll notice in the first, actually all of the ones I'm looking at the top seem to be in-person auctions. So there we have one on ZeusAuction.com here. But by far and away, quite a few of these are still in person. The pages, looks like it's reloading there. And there's, the further we scroll, I am seeing more online ones. And so it's a nice mixture. I know a lot of people that bid at auctions, maybe superstition or maybe it's true. A lot of people prefer the in-person auctions because they perceive them to be less competitive. And if you think about it, that could be true since an online auction removes the whole requirement for travel, so it potentially has a broader audience of investors. It's kind of to each his own. Some people really hate the idea of sitting in a courtroom for several days or for even hours and trying to bid on properties. So again, you probably have your own opinion on that. And Indiana has a variety of online or in-person auctions, so that could play to your advantage. I'll drop a link to this SRI page in the video description too. So now let's take a visual look, like an aerial tour of the state of Indiana and the auctions. And I did something a little different this time. I actually am showing you both upcoming auctions and the fall auctions that have already passed. So you'll notice Evansville in the southern tip, these red properties are unavailable because the auction has passed. They're still on partial fair for reference though, because if you bought one of these properties, like let's take this one for example, you might want to track some, some notes or documents on it. You could add it to some lists and say, I bought this property, whatever you want to say. You could make it a list of properties that I've purchased. And you could even upload some documents. Maybe you have some recent photos or even photos of the documents that for the lien. You can actually upload those and track them with the property. So you keep it all in one place and you can come back and reference it later. So we do track unavailable properties just for that reason, historical purposes and for your research. But as we scan across the state, you'll notice the top western corner. This is Lake County. This is the largest auction we took a look at that has passed, and you can see why. It's a very dense auction. A lot of properties there. So you also will see a lot of gold left, kind of yellowish gold properties. You'll notice, like for instance, Fort Wayne in this corner has both yellow and red. The reason you see red here is because those were previously listed and actually redeemed before the auction has happened. So you'll still, if you want to see those in the mix, you can do that. And I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm unavailable. I'm looking at the past 14 days. And in fact, we probably should look at more like 30 days because some of these could have redeemed earlier in the summer. But anyways, you get the point. Let's go ahead and hide the unavailable properties and see how many are left. Let me zoom out while that's happening. Oh, it's thinking about it. There we go. So now we have properties showing up that are still available in the auction. And let's see. Let's switch over to satellite view. And this is going to take away our contrast, but it will let you have a better look at the city grid here. And you might want to scan for something like rooftops or streets that look appealing to you. So I like the aerial view for that, especially when you're in a densely populated area with dense auction properties like this. And you'll notice there's still 11,254 parcels available, liens that are going to auction. So we are a little over halfway through, I guess, the number of properties. But so that's Fort Wayne, for example. Let me zoom out. So yeah, a lot of properties still available to go through. Indianapolis is another densely populated area here. So let's take one of these and just take a closer look at it. I'm just going to pick the first one I see. And so great, we have a street view, but it's the back of the house. So that's not typical. In fact, let's go look at the panorama view. And I want to drive my Google car to take a better look at this property. So we're going to drive down the street. And you can see the Google car is referencing it from the alleyway. So you're looking at this building with this house right here. And maybe we can swing around the front of the house and take a closer look. Sorry if this somebody's motion sick. We'll keep this a quick drive. So yeah, so now we're looking at this house right here. And you can see it does have damage. We're looking at some windows and maybe roof. I don't know. It doesn't look terrible. So this is the kind of house you would typically see in a tax auction. Again, we can take a look at the side of the house here. Definitely see some, looks like maybe some renovation going on or maybe some renovation that was abandoned. It's hard to say, but you can see some construction materials here as well. So that's just the kind of due diligence we can do from our computer desk. If we wanted to get more serious about this property, maybe it's something that meets our strategy, I would send a scout or drive myself and take a closer look at it. But on this parcel fair report, we can still see some other details, including the total valuation of $49,500, the street address, and the fact that it is occupied. It's also in an opportunity zone, which could be appealing in your strategy. We have a separate video about opportunity zones, lots of information out there about that. In this case, it will just suffice it to say that the Department of HUD, federal, are the ones that designate these. So let's move on down. We can click on the purchase option here. This is probably the next most important thing you should think through is, how do I buy it? And you'll notice we're in Marion County, which is going to be online at govies.com. So this is one of the online auctions. It's not on Zeus auction, so it's on Govies. And if you wanted to get information about that tax sale, actually this link will give you information directly about that. And then the auction list, we can link over to Govies and see the properties there as well. And this is where you place your bids. And one last piece, in the research links, if we want to know more about this property, you'll notice the county GIS, the state assessment, and the property card. We'll start with the property card. This shows me details from the county about the valuation of the property, and I could really dig in quite a bit on the county records online, as well as the state assessment card here, and that tells us more about the property. And finally, the county GIS, we can actually click on that and go look at another mapping system if we want to keep digging on this property. So there's a lot you can do just from your desk to do some due diligence on the properties. So let's take a look and see. Again, this is how you would kind of eyeball the properties, but why don't we take another look at how do we filter out some of the noise? So I've clicked on my search filters, and let's go ahead and let's just commit to Marion County. We'll just take it down to 1. And we can see there are 1,400 properties. Let me clear my filters. Yeah. So 1,400 properties in Marion available. We're looking at the upcoming auction. Let's take a look at only properties that have improvements. And so that takes us down to 1,081. That means about more than 2/3 of them have structures, which is uncommon. Let's make a total value minimum of $20,000. That should get us a decent property and hide some of the things that have sheds. And let's start with that. So that's going to show us 1,000 properties and really limit down the noise of what we're looking at here. On the right side, I could look at the street view and just kind of cherry pick that way if I wanted to. Like maybe this one interests me, so I click find on map and go straight to the property. This one stuck out just from the view, but also the fact that its valuation is $646,000. So that caught my attention as well. And maybe your strategy is that you don't want super expensive properties, so let's cap it at $200,000 as the maximum and $20,000 at the low end. Let's drop that again. Let's drop it to $150,000. And so now we're down to 880 properties. And let's say I'm going for rental properties, so I'm looking at my valuation thinking that's a good value for a rental property. And I want to use this owner location to say, why don't you show me only out-of-state owners? Well, I just cut my list from 880 down to 105. And what that did was, by limiting to out-of-state owners, I'm taking a bit of a guess here that if you own the house and it's tax delinquent and you're out of state, that maybe you don't have a strong interest in the property, I might have a better chance of this thing not redeeming. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that you are a landlord and it's already a rental property. So if that's the case and I'm able to get it, then it's already rental ready and potentially something I can use. So there's a lot behind that could happen, but I just opened up the next property I saw and it's actually vacant. So we're looking at a vacant property worth $48,000. And I'm going to use that panorama view again to take a peek at the house. The first thing I noticed is 2 front doors. I'm curious. It could be a duplex. I don't know. I don't see double mailboxes anywhere. That's usually a sign of it. I don't see any mailboxes unless they're on the house. I also don't see the address listed twice, so it's probably just right now a single. It looks kind of small too, so I would guess that this is not a duplex. In fact, now that I look at it, I think this was the front door on the left, and on the right side they boarded up a garage and added another door. So maybe there's a in-law suite or just a second entrance there. Who knows? But you can see I've done a little bit of guesswork on this property. I can take a look at the neighborhood and even drive down the street if I want to take a peek. But now I've got kind of an idea of what's going on with this property, and I could continue to dig if that meets my criteria and what I'm looking for. So that same kind of filter and dig strategy is what you can do in any of these counties in Indiana. There's quite a few to choose from. And to close out, let's take a look at that auction calendar and see what's remaining. You'll notice the first two auctions happened in August. So there they are, White and St. Joseph. Oh, 1 second. At the top, you'll notice I did filter to tax auctions only. Same as on SRI, I don't want to see foreclosures right now, just because we're not talking about them today. So tax auctions, there were 44 more in September and 43 more in October. In September, we can see some of these have already passed, and we're roughly around this part of the calendar, around Clay and Switzerland, Union, these kind of counties. So these are the ones that are coming up this coming week, and so on. You'll notice they're much smaller auctions. There's 100 properties, sometimes less than 100. And so those auctions, you can look at those pretty quickly using the strategy I just showed you, where you go through, filter, and then just dig deeper on a property. So again, just kind of glancing through, Marion County is in October. That's one of the larger ones that's remaining. Allen County as well, 562 properties. Madison County has over 1,300 middle of October. So quite a bit left in the season. Grant has over 600. Howard and LaPorta and Knox and Clark all have a few hundred apiece. So even to the end of the season, there's still some auctions that could be worth your time and investigating those. So I really hope this was helpful for you. I think this can kind of get your brain thinking through how you can compete across many auctions, even the small ones and the big ones, and quickly identify your strategy, and using our searches, just get down to the properties that you really want to take a closer look at. So thanks again for watching, and let's chat in the comments if you have questions. I'm always happy to discuss, and if you want to try Parcel Fair and haven't tried it before, we have a 7-day trial. I'll put a link to that in the description as well. So, hope you have a great week, and thank you.